TCU schedule is much tougher in 2025. Even if this is an improved team, it might not show up in the win column each week.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. I've been covering TCU athletics for 12 seasons. We're brought to you today by FanDuel. You win one $5 bet on FanDuel as a new customer. You get up to $300 in bonus bets. NFL playoffs in full swing right now. TCU football, getting ready for the offseason, getting ready for the offseason program, heading into spring ball in a couple of months. And the 2025 season itself, a lot of interesting storylines. Transfer portal, they're adding players. But one aspect of next year that is fascinating, this 2025 schedule is a bear. And I'm not using this as an excuse. I think this is a very important year for Sonny Dykes and his coaching staff. I feel like if they're not in Big 12 title contention, and I want to make a clear distinction here. In my mind, Big 12 title contention means in the last week of the season, you control your own destiny or you need minimal help. What happened this year does not count. Where if 27 different teams lost over the last 3 weeks and we got a full moon on Tuesday, then it meant TCU was in the Big 12 title game. They were out of it after losing to Baylor, and honestly probably before that when they dropped a game to Houston and to fall to 3-3 overall in the season. They closed the season nicely, but they were not a Big 12 title contender. Next year, they need to be in that spot. But when you look at the schedule for next season, or this upcoming season, I guess I should say, non-conference-wise, you start the year against North Carolina, which that game on paper did not look super intimidating about a month ago. But you're playing the Tar Heels. Not only are you playing them on the road, you're also facing Bill Belichick, who is one of the best football coaches of all time. He'll be running that defense, and he will have a plan for Josh Hoover and the TCU offense. I don't know what it's going to be yet. I imagine he's going to really lean on the fact that last season they could not run the ball. He's going to dare them to run the ball. But he'll have something cooked up for that ball game. And season openers are always kind of a can of worms because you got new faces, new players, and you don't always know what's going to happen. But the continuity that TCU has should really help them in that matchup. Still tough with Belichick. Your FCS game's Abilene Christian. Then you play SMU at home, which is good. But SMU embarrassed you last year in Dallas. They're a playoff team this year. They got beat by Penn State, but they were in the college football playoff. Kevin Jennings is the dude there now, quarterback. They ran the ball at will against the Frogs this past season. I wonder, Mike Buddy's in an interesting place. I don't know what his thoughts are about the Iron Skillet. And I know ultimately Jeremiah Donati made the reason to pull the plug on that because he wants an extra home game. He doesn't have to trade home and homes with SMU every other year. But, man, that game has a lot more juice to it right now because of SMU's Power 4 status and, frankly, just because SMU is a good football team and a good football program at the moment. And we'll see if they can sustain it. But that's not a game where TCU – and for a long time, the balance in the scale was tipped in SMU's favor because if they won, that was a big deal for them. It was a bad look for TCU. If they lost, I mean, not that they were happy about it, but it didn't really matter a whole lot in the grand scheme of things because they were always punching up a weight class. Now they're not. So that's your non-conference schedule. Your conference schedule – at Arizona State, at BYU, at Houston, at Kansas State. Your home games, Colorado, Baylor, Iowa State, Cincinnati, at West Virginia. And it makes me wonder, this could make things tricky to evaluate. Now, it's always kind of a crapshoot because last year I looked at that schedule going into the season and I was like, a lot of people are saying this is going to be a cakewalk, but I see some toss-up games here. And TCU's coming off a 5-7 season. Ultimately, the schedule ended up being pretty manageable. If the Frogs could have held on against UCF and won that game against Baylor or won against Houston, then they're sitting there with 10 wins in the regular season. But the road games, tough environments. BYU, really tough place to play. Arizona State, that's a team and program that's going to have a lot of momentum and energy going into the season. And then at K-State, your rivalry game in Baylor, Iowa State at home, Cincinnati at home, and then Colorado, which will be a tough game. Now, I saw Ed Warder today say that Deion Sanders is still in communication with the Cowboys, that people close to Deion are encouraging him to take the Cowboys job if it were offered to him, and that Jones is reportedly enamored with the thought and the opportunity of landing Deion. So that would really change the dynamic of Colorado. But as it stands, it's a tough game on paper. And so looking at the schedule itself, I want to throw this out to the audience. Does that temper your expectations at all? And does it change how you view what progress looks like for Sonny? Because even though, yes, it's a tough schedule, it doesn't change anything in my mind. Is it difficult? Yes. But we're in year 4 of this experiment. So it's not unreasonable to think that this team should be competing for a conference title. And, I mean, we know things can always change. Things can move around and shift and mold expectations in a different way. But with all the returning starters you have coming back, you should be prepared for this. You should be prepared for this type of gauntlet in Big 12 play, in non-conference play to a certain extent. You've got a veteran group of players, a coaching staff where, barring something unforeseen in the next few months, you don't have major changes. Coordinators are back. You lost your inside wide receivers coach, an assistant quarterbacks coach who was basically in the analyst role. But everyone else is coming back. And so is there a world where this team is better and more talented and they still end up with 8 wins? Sure. But I don't think you can accept that as, that would be a successful season. At some point, you got to take the next step up. Sonny did in year 1, and he hasn't been able to really replicate that since, even though in those final 6 or 7 games, we saw, okay, this is what, at his best, this is what Sonny looks like. And that's a murderer's row of coaches. Belichick, Rhett Lashley, Kalani Sitake, Kenny Dillingham, Willie Fritz, Chris Kleiman, Matt Campbell, Dave Aranda. That's a list of people that run good physical programs that are disciplined and that pride themselves on being contenders year in and year out. So is it possible that we could see progress on the field with the team without it really bumping up and moving the needle much in the win column? Yes, it's possible, but that doesn't mean that we should accept that. you still got to find a way to go win some of these tough games. Even those difficult road environments like at BYU, at Arizona State. If you are who you say you are, you got to find a way to steal some of those. When we come back, TCU men's hopes. They play Baylor this weekend. Women play Utah. We're getting to that time of year where things are more serious. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Prizepicks. If you're interested in the daily fantasy world, download the Prizepicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly when you play $5. Get that first $5 lineup and get $50 instantly. It's playoff time. There's no better way to get in the action than with Prizepicks. Here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least 2 players, and if your picks hit, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Yes, that's right, 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. Go to run your game or are you ready to run your game this playoff season? Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prizepicks. Prizepicks, run your game. So TCU men's hoops on Wednesday night, just an inexcusable loss to Utah. I talked about it at length in the, not really post-game show, but in the show that I did on Thursday. Utah's not a very good team. Gabe Madsen had a really big game for the Utes. But late in that ball game, TCU had multiple times where they cut the lead to 6. Utah led that ball game wire to wire, but there were a few times in the second half where it looked like TCU could make a run. They had it down there to like a 3-possession ball game, 2-possession ball game if you just hit a couple threes. And they just couldn't get stops. And it wasn't only they couldn't get stops. It wasn't like Utah was just hitting tough shots. Utah was getting dunks. They were getting uncontested layups. They were getting offensive rebounds. Everything was easy in the biggest moments of the game. Jacob Langford, one of our consistent listeners, viewers, he said men's hoops is in trouble, apathy, and just no excitement. We'll see what happens after this year with Jamie and the staff. Well, addressing the Jamie situation first, and I do want to talk about the team. I think even with a new AD, nothing's happening with Jamie. I have my frustrations with him and the coaching staff. You've made the tournament 3 years in a row. You're not completely out of it yet as far as this year goes, but I don't think this is a tournament team. This was supposed to be a rebuilding year. Frankie Collins goes down with an injury. Now, the way they played Wednesday was just not competitive. So that's not going to work. But overall, Jamie's done a good job through the years, and I feel like he's earned enough capital that even with some new leadership, he'll be okay. However, my big issue right now, losing is one thing. I don't like it. I'm not okay with it. But this basketball season so far, it kind of takes me back to Mike Miles' freshman year. That team was not very good. But you saw flashes of who Mike Miles could be. And he was this young player who was playing a lot of minutes. And he would have nights where he would go off and he would look like a star. And so even though the team was not very good, you saw the future in front of your eyes. And RJ Nembhard, who was a good player and could really score the ball, he was on that team as well, and he and Mike didn't mesh super well. They're both very ball-dominant players. And so it became apparent after the season, hey, we need to build this thing around Mike Miles. So RJ ended up going and trying to get in the league in the NBA. They brought in a bunch of transfers, and it worked. They made the tournament 2 straight years. They got out of the first round in a couple of years in a row. This team, they've got some talented young players, some people that we should be excited about, that going into the year we were excited about. Micah Robinson, David Punch, and Ashton Simmons, the freshman combo guard. It appears he's going to redshirt. Isaiah Manning and Jace Posey were two names that came up a lot in the offseason because they redshirted the year before, and it felt like this was a year where they could make a jump. Up until this point, though, Manning and Posey are just not getting it done. They can't score. They're struggling on defense at times. They're not giving them quality minutes right now. Micah Robinson has shown some promising things, just not super consistent. He can shoot free throws, which is a huge plus because nobody else on this team seems to be able to. But he's not able to consistently get his offensive game going, and he's still not really at a place, it appears, where he can kind of assert himself and get to the rim and do his own thing. David Punch, good player, great athlete. He does a lot of little things as a big man with rebounding and hustle plays and rim protecting that is exciting. But in a lot of ways, he's very similar to Ernest Uday. Uber athletic, great defender, a post game that's non-existent. Now, Punch is younger, and so his can still develop. But a post game that's non-existent and is really only going to score an offensive rebound, cleanup type duty, or rim running, that type of thing. Lobs. So it's really tough to play Punch and Uday together because it constricts your offense a lot and how much you can space out and how much you can move around. All that to say, right now, I don't feel like there's flashes of greatness from your young players. I don't believe that there's bright spots consistently. You see them occasionally. And I think Micah Robinson can end up being a dude, but we're more than a third of the way through the season now. So if he's going to emerge, it needs to happen soon. They play Baylor at Foster Pavilion down in Waco on Sunday afternoon. It doesn't look good on paper, even though Baylor just got blitzed by Arizona on Tuesday night. And this is not a Baylor team that appears to be like a national title contender. This is teetering on the edge of the top 25. However, TCU just lost to Utah, which is nowhere near the top 25. And so part of me thinks, okay, Noah Reynolds has been really good. He had a tough game Wednesday night, but overall he's been very solid for this team. Part of me thinks if this team has a pulse at all, they should come out highly motivated and play at a high level in this game against Baylor. Because it's desperation time. I mean, you're 2-3 in Big 12 play. You have to start stacking up quality wins if you're going to have any chance at making a run in the postseason. And so you can do that by beating Baylor on the road. But this team cannot score. Baylor's defense is not great. However, I'm afraid TCU might make them really comfortable because of their lack of firepower and consistency on offense. The team and the program just feels very stale right now. That's, I think, the best way I can describe it. Stagnant. I mean, they're not bottoming out, but it doesn't appear that they're trending in the right direction. And so at what point do you regroup and sort of recalibrate what you're doing, what your vision is, what your path is moving forward? But Baylor TCU this Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock. The women play Utah tonight in a top 25 matchup. This stretch of games for the women is insane. Utah tonight, Oklahoma State next week, who's also ranked, Kansas State, Iowa State, Baylor in the near future as well. Rubber about to meet the road for this women's team. And they've played good teams this year. They played Notre Dame and won that game, played NC State, played South Carolina. But you're hitting the teeth in the middle of that Big 12 conference where the teams are all really good and really salty and competitive. So we'll see how Sedona Prince and Haley Van Lith and company respond on Friday evening. We'll come back and get some of your thoughts on yesterday's show. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I tell you about them every day. FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. Download it today. You win one $5 bet, you get $300 in bonus bets. NFL playoffs are going on, guys. Get in on the action right now. Divisional round. We're coming up on the NFC, AFC title games. Super Bowl right around the corner. It's all happening. FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. Again, you win one $5 bet. You get up to $300 in bonus bets. That's a crazy return on one winning bet. FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. The promo code is LockedOnCollege. Check it out. Set it up today. Give it a try for the first time. FanDuel, official betting partner of the National Football League. It's where the game starts. Yesterday, I discussed Mark Kalla, who was an assistant quarterbacks coach on TCU staff for the past few seasons. He's been following around Kendall Browse for a long time. They worked together at Houston, at FAU, at Florida State, at Arkansas, and then eventually here at TCU. And Mark's getting a chance to go call plays as an offensive coordinator at UTEP. So it totally makes sense why he's leaving. It is a little bit of a shakeup. And I just made the point, I think TCU needs to go find a similar type of coach. Kalla was on 247's 30 under 30 list. He's young, he's hungry, he's innovative. I would like to see Sonny go after someone like that in that mold instead of maybe going and getting an analyst who is a former head coach somewhere and is sort of looking for a bridge to their next job. Go hire an assistant coach who maybe can lay down some roots here over the next few years and really help Kendall maximize what he's doing by helping with the quarterbacks on a daily basis. Off Track says the coaching carousel, nothing new. Anytime a coach leaves, there's impending staff turnover. I believe it's better for his future. If you win, teams poach. With that said, winning attracts good coaches. I think Sonny can put it together. I'm optimistic. Yeah, it does. I mean, Sonny, I think one of Sonny's strengths is that he is good at hiring assistants and finding talented people who can do their job at a high level and empowering them to do that job. And so when you do those things, that means you're right. Folks are going to shop around and try to get your guys to go elsewhere. Because that's a huge part of the secret sauce for Sonny's programs and has been for a while. So, yes, I'm optimistic as well. And I don't think, this is not going to be a hire that really sends much of a ripple effect anywhere, or even that you can pinpoint on a weekly basis, here's the improvement that came from landing this person, hiring them, and bringing them on. But it's still important that you have someone who is more than just a sounding board or a yes man for the offensive coaching staff, but really pushes the team to do more and to think differently and to be better. KTM in Idaho says, this happens. Remember we lost Coach Riley? Sounds like a good move for Coach Kalla. Why not take the job? Pay grade increase. Congratulations. And he said I sounded like I was speaking at a funeral. Well, that wasn't my intention. Just to clear something up, I totally understand why he took the job. And I think it's a great opportunity for him as people laid out. I have no hard feelings about it. I was simply pointing out that he's moving on. And, TCU's going to have to make a move of their own now to keep pace. But I don't feel like this is a hire or a loss that you're going to feel a lot on a day-to-day basis. It was just something worth noting because quietly this coach has been very instrumental in the input that he's had with Kendall and just sort of, hey, let's try these things. Let's run these plays. He's working with the quarterbacks closely, so he knows what they're into. He knows what they're most comfortable with. And that's a big advantage when you're talking about now you've got less time than ever with all the different things, all the different ways coaches are pulled in other directions. Having someone who's more targeted and, hey, you're working with the quarterbacks, that's your thing, so I can focus more on big picture stuff. That's a huge advantage. And TCU's had that advantage for the last few seasons, and now they'll have to go hire somebody to continue to hopefully exploit that moving forward. Thank you for hanging out this week. We'll be back on Monday. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast.